Okay, it is 11:30, and in the interest of time and to be respectful of everyone's time, I'm going to go ahead and get started on this presentation. Good mid-morning, afternoon, depending on where you are in the state. My name is Kara Kumari. I am Assistant Commissioner for Communications and External Affairs for the Department of Disability and Aging, and you are joining our Katie Beckett for clinicians presentation focused really on our HRA account and the letters of medical necessity in that program, as well as our foster support care coordination program, which also uses the HRA model, formerly called the Tennessee Strong Families Program. These programs are very similar in how they operate their HRAs. And we wanted to get on here and discuss with clinicians a little bit about the program goals, and then that letter of medical necessity that is required for reimbursement or payment of a lot of the things that are in there in this, and also to make sure that we're being good stewards of taxpayer money, and explaining some of the different ways that these letters of medical necessity can be used, and also some of the ways that they should not be used. I would like to also introduce that we have our program directors for both the Katie Beckett Part B program and our Foster Support Care Coordination program, Timothy Bo Hickman and Babs Tierno, on here as well. We are going to go through a quick presentation, and then we're going to have plenty of time for questions and answers afterwards. They will, of course, be the experts on a lot of those questions. So without delay, I am going to go ahead and get started on this presentation. Okay, so over the course of the next little while, we are going to do a brief overview of the Katie Beckett and Foster Support Care Coordination Program. We'll talk a little bit about program rules and medical necessity. We're going to talk about the letter of medical necessity. Specifically, while it's not required to be used, Katie Beckett does have, and Foster Support Care Coordination does have, a letter of medical necessity designed for the program that can help make it easier when it comes to certain types of items that may be reimbursed. We have some special considerations for the letter of medical necessity, and then we are here for questions as well. So a little bit before we get started, our goal in this presentation is to educate folks about the program rules and understand where there is some potential for misuse. Like, one of the things we want to say is that this program is not intended to dissuade clinicians from writing letters of medical necessity, but we do want to share with you some of the things we're seeing that should not be on letters of medical necessity as well, so that we can do our job and make sure that we're protecting taxpayer money, because this is a solely taxpayer-funded programs. Not employees. This is not like employee-run HRAs where I might contribute to my HRA. This is one where the money is coming solely from either the state of Tennessee or a federal Medicaid fund. So we need to make sure we're aligning with those program rules as well. So a little bit about these programs. If you're on here, I'm guessing that many of you already are probably familiar with these programs, but I'm going to give you guys just a very brief overview of what these programs are. This program is for children, first with the Katie Beckett program. This is a program that is for children with disabilities and or complex medical needs whose parents make too much money to qualify for Medicaid. So in these cases, that child would qualify for Medicaid based on their own income or their disability, but because it is based on the parent's income or assets, they do not qualify for Medicaid. Oftentimes, those medical bills for a lot of those children are very, very excessive, and not all the time does private insurance pay for all of the costs of caring for those children. In the Katie Beckett program, there are two primary parts. There's Part A and Part B. This letter of medical necessity, this HRA program, is only available in Part B of the program. But Part B of the program is the much larger part of the program, has approximately 4,700 children enrolled in that part of the program. In the Part B part of the program, there is an annual cap. It is $10,000 a year. It is per calendar year, and that money cannot be rolled over into the next year. So it is a program that has a calendar year requirement. That money must be spent in the calendar year and is only for that calendar year. Our foster care support care coordination program, FSCC, it used to be called Tennessee Strong Families. This is a program for children in foster care. So those children are in foster care who have intellectual and or developmental disabilities. This operates solely as a healthcare reimbursement account. So it operates solely as an HRA. It's the only service available in the program. We have about 700 foster children who are currently enrolled in the program. And this currently has a $10,000 annual cap also in the calendar year as well. The enrollment for this program is done solely through DCS caseworkers. So it has the children are referred through their DCS caseworker. There is not an external application enrollment for this program, unlike Katie Beckett, where all of those enrollments are processed through TennCare Connect portal and then come to TennCare and DDA for further assessment. So when it comes to program funding, as I mentioned, this is not like a traditional HRA where a person contributes their own money into that HRA. This is funded in the Katie Beckett Part B program. It is funded through Medicaid. This is considered to be a diversion program, but does receive Medicaid funding. And this program must follow rules as outlined in the state's Medicaid approved Medicaid waiver. The FSCC program is solely state funded. So that funding for that foster care support is done through state funding. Both programs, as I mentioned, rely on taxpayer money and are subject to audit to identify and prevent fraud, waste, and abuse. We do work with the Office of Program Integrity on the Katie Beckett side for Medicaid fraud detection, and then with internal and comptroller auditors for all of the programs, as well as the FSCC program. So as I mentioned, both the Katie Beckett Part B program and FSCC rely on the healthcare reimbursement account model to support children and families. So this looks very similar to what we do as far as those HRAs that we might be a part of. Families receive a card and they can pay upfront at qualifying expenses at places that will take the card, or they can receive reimbursement for qualifying expenses after the service is rendered. Our current vendor in this program is Task. This is a very large scale vendor of HRA accounts. We recently switched to them last year, and they are the current vendor in this program. We do use those IRS rules for qualifying expenses. Those can be found in Section 105 of the Internal Revenue Code. So this is not a program that just relies on quote unquote best judgment. This is a program that does rely very strictly on those IRS rules, including as to when a letter of medical necessity is needed and when one is not needed. So medical necessity, this is something that is defined in our program rules. And you can see that we have a very long definition there. As defined by the Katie Beckett program, and this is just the Katie Beckett program definition, but this is also the same definition that's used in FSCC as well. It means the service, including type, amount, frequency, and duration, must meet one or more of the following. It must be of direct therapeutic or ameliorative benefit to the child's medical needs or disabilities, support the child's full integration and participation in the community, help prepare the child for transition to employment and community living with as much independence as possible, help prepare the child for transition to employment and community living with as much independence as possible, support and sustain the family's ability to meet the child's medical, physical, behavioral, functional, and other support needs, and reduce or prevent the risk of out-of-home placement. Ultimately, the goal of this program is to make sure that families and these children can stay out of hospitals and institutions and be able to fully live in the family home and participate in life in the community. Along with that medical necessity component, it's also really important to understand our program's goals. As I mentioned, the first and foremost is to avoid institutionalization and to maintain community-based placements. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep kids out of nursing homes, hospitals, institutions, We want to make sure that they are able to stay in that family home and be able to receive the care they need in that family home. We want to help children meet developmental milestones and goals so that they're able to accomplish the things that they want to accomplish in their life. We want to offset the cost of medically necessary items not covered by private insurance. We do know that private insurance does not always pay for everything, and we want to make sure that those costs are covered when medically necessary for those families. And then finally, we want to provide fiscally sound management to ensure the integrity of taxpayer dollars. And another thing that I would also mention is that in the foster support care coordination program, we want to make sure that we're not the goal of this is to provide these families with the support they need to avoid disruptions. We do know in that program there are children with disabilities have the tendency to have the most disrupted placements. We have seen tremendous success in maintaining stable placements in this program, and many children with disabilities rely on routines. They need to be able to have some predictability. Disruptions can cause not only health concerns, it can cause behavioral concerns. And so when we can maintain those stable placements for those foster children, everybody wins. And this program is doing a tremendously good job of maintaining those stable placements. So finally, we'll talk a little bit about the letter of medical necessity. Now, LOMNs for many clinicians, this is not a new thing. This is not something that is just coming because of these programs. But we do have a very specific LOMN for both programs to help clinicians and families, and also to help reduce the denials. One of the things we saw when we first started this program is that some of the things that might be required for some of the children in this program might not look the same as an LOMN for somebody who does not have a disability. And so as we realized some of the areas where questions were being asked, we were able to better refine these LOMNs with our vendor to make sure that we were helping families identify those areas and improve the efficiency and reduce the denials so that folks could get their money reimbursed as quickly as possible. We do encourage participants to use the DDA LOMN, but once again, it is not required. LOMNs, sometimes they can be, each of our vendor has an LOMN. Sometimes there are others. We do encourage the use of the ones by DDA, but they are not required and they will not be refused. Other ones will not be refused just because it's not the DDA one. The difference between the LOMN in these programs versus what is typical for an LOMN is the time that it can be valid. An LOMN in this program can be valid for either 1 year, which is traditionally how LOMNs are used, or they can be marked by the clinician for the duration of the time the child is enrolled in this program. Oftentimes, some of the, a child that has a diagnosis of a specific disability, that's probably not getting better after a year. So that can be something that you can mark for the duration of the program so that that family does not have to go get that LOMN re-upped just because the year is up. Any additional pages to the LOMN? So if we have an LOMN, sometimes they can be very lengthy. We do provide space for further elaboration, but sometimes people need more. Any additional pages to that LOMN must be on a clinician's letterhead or bear a clinician's signature on each additional page. We have had some instances where that has not occurred, and there is no way for us to tell if someone just wrote an additional page without getting a doctor to look at it and added it to it, or whether that's actually coming from the clinician itself. So we need to be able to, and by we, I mean our vendor, needs to be able to look at something and fully understand this is coming from the prescribing clinician, that this is coming from a clinician and not just a piece of paper with more writing on it that has really no signature or indication that it's coming from a clinician. Another thing is that DDA's LOMN includes a checkbox for specific items that are commonly requested with a note if more detail is needed. Once again, we're trying to do our best to make sure that we're reducing any denials and making sure that folks fully understand some of the detail that might be needed for certain items that are commonly requested in the Katie Beckett program that might not be something that is traditionally requested by a family or a child that does not have a disability. So here is a little look at some of those check boxes that I was talking about on the DDA LOMN. You can see that there are some recommended areas, sensory items. When it comes to sensory items, there are some specific websites that items on those websites will be approved. Because they are websites that have been verified to be used for instance, an autism sensory item and an autism site. If not, then we need those listed and specified in that box below. There are non-traditional therapies. Supplements and or vitamins, home modifications. In that case, we also need a capital expense worksheet, but that is something that is not provided by the clinician. School tuition, car seat or stroller, tablet or laptop, formula, nutritional supplement drinks, incontinence supplies, specialty clothes and shoes. It says here, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, it may be subject to a cost comparison of a comparable non-specialty item. Therapeutic camps, and then there are some other things. You can see these are some of the check boxes that are available on that DDA letter of medical necessity. And then when we're looking at it, we also want to make sure that those letter of medical necessities are aligning to the program intent. One of the things that was something that was said by our previous vendor over and over again when it comes to looking at these LOMNs, that it really hits home, is that beneficial is not the same as medically necessary. Something might be beneficial, but it might not be medically necessary. And they have to look at that very specific definition of medically necessary for that child. Some special considerations that are also taken into account. First of all, as I mentioned earlier in the program, that $10,000 annual cap, it must be used in the calendar year. It does not roll over. So if something is purchased on January 2nd, it's coming out of that new $10,000 allocation, not the previous years if there's any left. The service must occur before reimbursement will be issued. This is something that has come up a lot. There are times where a family is able to prepay and maybe get a discounted rate for instance, 10 therapy visits, but they cannot reimburse for any of those therapy visits until the actual visit occurs. So if they prepay for 10 and then they have a visit on June 1st and they have another one on July 1st, all of those will be reimbursed after that visit occurs and we know that service has been rendered. Items must be for the child and not for other members of the family. So this is not a case where something can be paid for that's going to be used by another family member. This is an item, this program is for those children who are deemed eligible for the program. So want to make sure that that is very, very clear. Also, the program will only pay for the child's portion of a membership. There is an exception here, for instance, like a gym membership, because the child usually can't go to the gym until but for a family person has to bring them to the gym, but we won't pay for a family membership. We would take out the child's portion and one family member's portion of a membership and be paying for that. So those are some of the things that are special considerations in this program. Now, as I mentioned, unfortunately, after about 6 years in this program, we have seen some items that are some ways that the letter of medical necessity has been misused. And we want to make sure that we're avoiding those types of misuse and making sure that we're maintaining the highest integrity in this program. So here are some items that should not be on a letter of medical necessity. Cruises, Disney tickets, pools and hot tubs, basketball courts, animals that are not service animals. In order for it to be reimbursed, we would need to see documentation that this is a service animal. Nannies, childcare is not allowable under those IRS rules. This is different from short-term respite, which is allowable, but a nanny will not be paid for. Housekeepers are not paid for. And then traditional childcare items that are not adaptive and tied to a child's disability, such as childcare clothing and food. We talked about how adaptive clothing could be covered, but it would be used in a cost compare. There would likely be a cost comparison through versus a traditional item versus an adaptive item. Same with foods. The difference between a specialized item and a traditional item will be reimbursed if medically necessary. So if a child has a specialized food, we would look at that. But like, for instance, just a traditional baby onesie, something that you would be paying for with or without a child's disability, would not be covered. Same with traditional food as well, because those are traditional childcare items that would be paid for regardless of the child being in the program or having a disability or not. We also want to stress that this program is a partnership. The Katie Beckett program and the FSCC depend on our partnerships. So these are partnerships we have with the families, we have them with clinicians, we have them with advocates. This program works because there are all of these folks that are invested in that child and really want to make sure that we're doing the best for the child, and also working together to maintain this program. And because of that, there's also a shared responsibility to make sure these programs operate within program rules. The vast majority of these families are using these funds properly and depend on these funds. We know that this program can be a game changer for so many families that are able to see milestones reached by their children and provide that physical and financial relief and sustain that family caregiving. And we want to make sure that we're doing that. And that includes maintaining the integrity of this program and diminishing bad actors, because it only takes a few bad actors to call into question the integrity of an entire program. And we want to preserve this program for the thousands of people who depend on this program. And I just wanted to make sure that we are really underlining how much we depend on you all and how much we depend on our families to make this program as successful as it has been. So I'm going to stop sharing and try to share a video. Not used to using WebEx anymore, so hopefully you guys can hear this video, but if not, somebody please let me know if you cannot. This is just one way that this program provides a tremendous benefit for folks that are enrolled in the program. This is about the Katie Beckett program. Once I get it up, I will.
Katie Beckett has just improved Archer's quality of life so much. Archer has a rare genetic disease called a proximal biogenesis disorder, and it basically causes global issues all over his body. For instance, he's deaf and blind, he has low muscle tone and poor balance, and that is a significant impact on his daily life. This disorder affects his bones and his teeth development. We've never been able to get a good dental exam because he needed to be sedated. That was a big expense that we were able to use the Katie Beckett for, and such relief for us that we were finally able to get him the dental care that we knew he needed. He has opportunities to have normally. He's very, very, very social. During the summer, there's not a lot of opportunities for him to be around other kids. There's only one summer camp we have here locally, but it's quite pricey. Katie Beckett was able to cover that for him, and that makes such a huge, huge impact that he doesn't have to be like isolated all summer. We got an advanced mobility adaptive stroller. Here we go. So we can take him on walks and lets him be out of the house a little bit more. Improving his quality of life is just really priceless. I really couldn't wrap my mind around not choosing it because of the opportunities you can have for your child and opportunities for parents as caregivers. You know, for us, the respite portion is huge. Just to have a little bit of help with your child just really improves the whole family dynamic. It's just given him more access to his world, taken some burden off of us financially, emotionally. I just know that if he could, he would thank the organization that is providing this for him. If they could see how much joy he gets, it's just such a huge, huge blessing, and I know he would say thank you if he could, like a million times, thank you.
Okay. And so that is our program in a nutshell. I believe that's all the slides I have as well. Let's see. Yep, that's it. So, with that, I want to make sure that I'm opening it up for any questions you all have. Like I said, we have Bo and Babs on here. They are the experts and they're happy to answer any questions you may have. Please drop your questions in the chat and we'll get to them as they appear. I see, will the slides be, emailed to participants after? We are recording this. I believe we have email addresses and we will see what we can do with that. A parent told me they qualified for Katie Beckett, but they were told there is no more money this year. How does this work? Bo, would you like to take that question?
Guys hear me? Hey,
We do.
thank you. Yeah, so essentially, if we need, obviously, there's a great demand for the program. We have almost 4,700 people enrolled in Part B, and around 300 in Part A. So, what that means is there's a waiting list right now. And so until we get more slots allocated, then folks enroll when someone else disenrolls. And so it's by attrition that folks are enrolling right now. So it's not that there's no more money, there's really no more federal slots we have to enroll children into the program at this time. Um, and those slots are dependent on our ability to fund a third of that, and the federal government fund the other two-thirds. So it's really just a game of us trying to be responsible fiscally while trying to serve the most amount of children in the state.
So yes, we do currently have a waiting list in the Katie Beckett program due to availability of slots. I saw earlier you said service animals can be covered under the program. Would emotional support animals be covered?
So we've said essentially that I believe the rule is that it says service animals can be covered. I'm not clear on the emotional support animals. I don't believe that is being covered because it's such a broad category. Babs, do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. Specific to the foster care side of the program, we do not allow permanent expenses of any kind, which would include animals. And the reason for that is because these children are in transition, they're not in their permanent placement, and adding a service animal or emotional support animal to that situation could actually be a barrier to permanency for that child. So we do not allow any animals of any kind in the program. I believe there is a carve out in the IRS guidelines for emotional support animals, and we have told Task, our HRA vendor, to look at those very closely and to come to us for a conversation about those before we proceed with anything.
So yes, so that is one of the key differences between the foster care side of this program and the Katie Beckett side. Obviously, with Katie Beckett, the family home is their permanent home. With foster care, we're looking for, reunification is always the goal. But there are disruptions as well, and that must be able to be. It's for the child and should be able to move with the child. Do kids need the social security number to get Katie Beckett? Are they allowing to apply with the tax number if they don't have social security? Question we get a lot. Bo.
So you have to have a number to put in there in order to apply. So essentially, I don't know what the tax number would fit in there actually. And so what you're doing when you apply for Katie Beckett is you're applying for Medicaid straight up. So you go to the website, TennCare website, you complete a Medicaid application, and during the part of the Medicaid application, a Katie Beckett prompt will pop up, and then you enter information in. So it's really no different than any other child applying for Medicaid in the state of Tennessee. So whatever those requirements are the same for a child applying for this program.
A family brought up Part C of Katie Beckett last week. Any info you can provide on that? Yes, I'll send that to Bo. And there are actually 3 parts of the Katie Beckett program, but Part C is so small and specific, we usually do not include it in our presentations, but I will let Bo talk about that.
Yeah, it's a really good question because so Part C is essentially a placeholder. If there's a child with Medicaid who's losing Medicaid, and there's an end date in the system where the child is maybe in an appeal to maintain the Medicaid, if they can apply for Katie Beckett at that point. And when they apply for Katie Beckett, we go through all the processes for intake for Part B, and then we see if they can qualify for Part A, which is provides a Medicaid benefit. So if they're able to qualify for Part A, then Part C allows them to maintain that Medicaid until a Part A slot becomes available. So you wouldn't necessarily see a Part C unless there was a Part A waiting list. So just the most important thing is Part C is just a placeholder for a child who is losing Medicaid and who otherwise qualifies for Part A.
And just so you all know, Part A, which is operated by TennCare Select, is the program that provides for the most significant disabilities, children that have the most significant disabilities and the most complex medical needs, provides full Medicaid services for those children, along with what's called $15,000 of wraparound services. So those children, they may be required to pay a premium depending on the family's modified adjusted gross income in Part A, but they would, private insurance must also pay first, Medicaid coming in and picking up after the fact, including copays, but those families do get those full Medicaid services. Most often in Part A of the program, those families usually have a skilled nursing need. That child has a skilled nursing need. That's overwhelmingly the most used service in Part A, and has a tendency, those families have that type of need. Oftentimes private insurance does not cover in-home nursing, and that Katie Beckett Part A would pick up the tab there. Are there limits on the types of diagnoses that would qualify a child? Bo.
So essentially what qualifies a child for Katie Beckett Part B is they either have an intellectual/developmental disability or they have a complex medical condition that would qualify them for the program. So when I say a complex medical condition, what we're looking at again is to Kara's point is nursing related needs, G tubes, vents and trachs potentially. So just really those really complex medical challenges that require ongoing nursing. That's that piece. For intellectual and developmental disability, we use the state's definition for both of those. So for intellectual disability, that's an IQ score of 70 or below manifested prior to age 18. And for developmental disability, that is a diagnosis that qualifies a child as having 3 deficits, with a specific diagnosis of a developmental disability, as opposed to ADHD, which is not a developmental disability for the purposes of this program. So basically, your mental health diagnoses, your bipolars, those in and of themselves are not qualifiers for Katie Beckett. It's really about developmental disability, intellectual disability, and complex medical condition. We do know that ID and DD exist concurrently sometimes with a complex medical condition. So that's not the issue. The issue is there's other diagnoses out there on the mental health side of things that wouldn't necessarily qualify a child for Katie Beckett.
Babs, any other thing you want to mention?
Yeah, I would just carve out that when it comes to children in foster care, we regularly see cases of medical neglect, a lack of diagnoses, a lack of medical care, or no medical care at all. And so there is a period of time where we will hold open eligibility within our program to allow for an EPS-D&T and those basic assessments to be completed for a child who we suspect of having ID or DD, but we have no documentation to go on. And so there are times where we will hold open a referral for a period of time in order to get some of that testing in place. But we use the same statute as Katie Beckett, 3 substantial functional delays, and everything that Bo talked about.
Thank you, Babs. Next question. What is going to prevent a family from qualifying for Part B with a child that has low functioning autism? They have commercial insurance that does not cover services, DME, or AE.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't see any rationale for that child not qualifying as described on the screen. The only thing that would disqualify them, all things being equal, would be if they had Medicaid on top of any commercial insurance already.
And we do medical, a part of our application process, there's a financial assessment to make sure you don't qualify for Medicaid, but also a medical assessment where they're looking at both the medical needs and also, Bo, correct me if I'm wrong, the functional needs of the child to see
Yes.
if they qualify.
Yeah, there's a functional assessment that goes along with the diagnostic portion of it's basically a PAE is what it is. It's a pre-admission evaluation, just like other pre-admission evaluations for different programs. This one requires, the medical side and then the functional assessment side. And so to the question again, the child could have qualified already, but they may be on the waiting list. That's another possibility in the case referenced.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I don't see any other questions, so and if you have some, drop them in chat. But if not, then I'm going to call this presentation to a close. Hopefully, we were able to provide some information that can help you all. Also, we're happy to answer any questions you may have. I am going to drop my email in chat. And you can feel free to reach out to me afterwards, and I can get the question directed to the right person as well. Just want to make sure that we're trying to be good partners and help answer any questions you all may have when it comes to this program. It is a vitally important program, programs, because there are 2 of them. We've seen tremendous success with these programs. We want to continue that success. And so we're just looking forward to continuing to partner with you all to make these programs and help make these children and these families have as great of a life as they possibly can. Thank you so much.